without further ado, I don't know how we're going to do this. We usually do this in-house, but I'd like to say pledge of allegiance. So, I guess we can stand and we'll sit. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, folks. Sorry for that being unorthodox, being on the Zooms. I'd like to welcome everyone here tonight. Without further ado, I'd like to get right into superintendent's updates, please.
Thank you, Steve. I'd like to welcome our newest member, Mr. Bernstein.
Hi, everyone.
He's welcome the challenge.
Steve. Thank you very much.
Start off with a few updates going back a couple weeks. Seems to be a recurring trend. Our staff has been out working with multiple suppression companies while the weather has been working in our favor, so they can get done with their required sprinkler flow tests at the large commercial buildings throughout the town. Whether this was related or unrelated, still yet to be determined, but back on New Year's Day, seems like it was very long ago, actually only 11 days ago, technician that was on call was called out for a dirty water complaint. Because the weather was cooperative then, he actually did some flushing down on Pine Street. It's not uncommon once we go to a location, open up a hydrant, that we have additional calls come in because we're changing the flow of the water, the direction and the flow speed of the water. So we had, I believe there were 3 other calls that come in from that same location. He remained on site, opened up more than one hydrant in areas where they could allow to run for a longer period of time, went about his day, did his morning rounds for both the water and sewer, checked on them periodically and returned. All 3 were clean. By the time he completed his rounds, there's no actual determination on time. They did run for obviously a couple hours, whether they cleaned up within 10 minutes or, right before he re-arrived. We logged the time based on the gallons that were flowed. But he didn't physically sit there, and babysit the hydrants, as sometimes you would typically see, especially if there was water running in the road or was going to create a hazard. So it's unfortunate that does happen quite often. We actually, call it a domino effect. If we have one call in a location, we respond, we open up a hydrant closest to that home that called and complained of the disturbance. More often than not, they haven't contacted their neighbors or somebody down the street. So we start changing direction of flow, especially this time of year when everything has a relatively low velocity. It's not uncommon to see some changes in direction and some additional discolored water. So by him flowing the 3 different hydrants while he was there, it actually was enough to change the normal flow of water, and we had a decent flush from the intersection of Pine Street and Plain down to 167 Pine, which is our well 1 location. So we turned over that water main at a low flow rate, but significant enough to remove the disturbance. Jump down to, actually I'll touch on that a little bit more. We had a couple other calls, this isn't in the actual minutes, but related to this. And we've spoken to a few different people on Pine Street and other places throughout town that seem to be unaware that there's actually personal maintenance that needs to be done on their side of the water service, including inside their own home. If you have a very long water service, it also can allow time for the water to settle out and debris to settle in the bottom of the service. We've recommended to a few of these people, to run, obviously not today with 10 degrees outside, but when the weather's appropriate, run as many cold water faucets as you can at one time with no aerator. So if you have a sink, remove the aerator. But typically if you run a few outside hose connections and a bathtub, you can move enough water that you typically don't see that type of velocity in a water service, and that's usually enough to scour the water service above and beyond its normal flow rate. So we've had very good success with that. Same thing we recommend, following the manufacturer's recommendation, if you have a hot water tank, flushing that a minimum of twice a year. certain locations, and the smaller the tank or the larger the tank, depending on your usage, you may have to adjust those numbers accordingly. But just some basic maintenance things that we've educated a few customers on, and thankfully, knock on wood, they've had good success doing that. In some more significant situations, we've actually installed spacer bars in place of the meter if it's been a reoccurring problem, and that allows us to get a few more PSI going through instead of being bottlenecked inside the water meter. And we've allowed those residents to run their water for an extended period of time, especially if they're far off the road. Some of the homes have larger water services because they want to have the volume on the second and third floor of the residents that are way far off of the road. That creates an issue when you don't see that type of movement continuously. The same as we do see in our larger water mains. So definitely a few things to think about. We responded, unfortunately, many different times to particular locations, and the water in the street is actually clear. We've taken samples, brought it up to the homeowner, explained to them, the situation, showed them the water in the street, and more often than not, some people have actually come to the hydrant when they've seen us out there and have waited for it to get dirty. Now, I'm not saying that it doesn't always get dirty. It does, and sometimes you'll see a slug that'll be pulled through. But our water has vastly improved from what we used to see even just 2 years ago. With the implementation of the water treatment facility that's online now, and additional changes coming down the road with a new pump at well 5 and well 6, and even right now we're working on getting a temporary pump, and I'll go into that a little bit more in great detail later on. But I kind of strayed away from where I was going there. I'm going to jump over to public notification.
Frank, if I may, have those homeowners experiencing this continued issue? Have they been offered the rebate program? Has that been offered to them or presented to them?
There was discussion about the rebate program to a few residents. A couple people already have an existing filter. A few people I've spoken to, we've talked about different types of cartridges that could be used. I'm definitely not a professional in picking out what cartridge to use, but each person we've spoken to in different areas of town that either has a filtration system or is looking at possibly purchasing one, we've told them to basically do a little bit of homework. Each person's needs are a little bit different. We have people that call who complain about the chlorine smell if they're close to the water treatment facility. For example, down off of Bay Road or Charlotte, King Philip. Typically not an area that you see dirty water unless we're out there doing flushing or unless there's a fire test or something going on. But because they're close to the water treatment facility and the wells, they would actually see or smell the chlorine in the water. And obviously some people are sensitive to that. Don't want to take a drink and smell the chlorine. So that would just be a basic filter, a GAC filter, typically like the ones you find inside the dispenser on your refrigerator door. We've used that as an example, actually. If somebody takes a glass of water from their refrigerator, if you can still smell it, well, chances are you need to replace the GAC filter. More often than not, they will remove most taste and odor and smell from the water. Other people deal with sediment on occasion, and they can get by with one of the cheaper woven fabric type filters. Something that we use in our well locations when we would mix the chlorine batches, so that we would remove any straggler particles of iron and manganese, to keep it out of the mixture of the chlorine bleach. So each location is specific, and it's up to the homeowner to determine, their particular need when they're picking out a cartridge. The whole house filter is a great idea. It's a great standard, and you can change the cartridges based on changes in water quality that you're looking to achieve.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, to this day, Steve, we haven't had too much interest in the filter program. We had a lot of inquiries at first when we first talked about it. I believe it was might have been October when we first started talking about it. Nobody, to my knowledge, as of yet, has filled out and completed the process for the reimbursement.
Well, it's there. Hopefully people can get this thing.
Yeah, definitely a good option to have there. Just one more thing that we can have there to help the residents out if they do experience some discoloration.
Great.
All right, so the public notifications, they were mailed out, I believe last Saturday is probably when most people received theirs. We've generated probably 4 or 5 calls in total out of the 5,000 plus notifications that were sent out. Pretty basic standard form that you see from Mass DEP. A couple things that stick out. I know I touched on this quickly at the joint meeting that we had between the Water Commission and Select Board. Basically, it stands out directly in the middle of the page. It's not an emergency. This is more of an informational page that goes out. It has some keywords and key paragraphs that are on there that are required by Mass DEP to explain what has happened and what is being done. For the most part, most people that have called, it really seems like they didn't read completely through the entire listing on the page. They got basically the top couple paragraphs and generated the phone call, which unfortunately is what we anticipated would happen. One person I had spoke to actually just not that long ago, read through the page and, basically understood the situation, was more concerned about where it was and what they mean by over a lifetime of exposure. So I explained to them it was one of our dead-end locations. It's Richardson Avenue, all the way down near the Attleboro town line, which is typical where you would find a higher number of TPHMs because it has the longest residence time. Also explained to them basically if they have any concerns, this is something, we're not doctors, we're not going to tell you, what you can and can't do. We don't know any ailments or anything going on. Speak to your doctor, explain, show them a letter. If they have any questions, they can even call us. Again, we're just going to, give them the basic information that we have here and, refer them to, there's a website that's on here that was required to be put in by Mass DEP. And it gives you some information basically about how THMs are formed, what they are, where you can typically see them. It's not just in drinking water. You can deal with it, in pools, in hot tubs, in any other location where chlorine or a type of disinfection reacts with a natural organic, whether it be a mineral or some other type of product. Most people have been very understanding about the notice. As I mentioned before, it's an informational notice that gets sent out as required because there was an exceedance. The exceedance amount isn't something to focus on, even though it was a minuscule amount over the long-running annual average. The annual average number is 80 parts per billion, that's ppb. We averaged out at this one location at 82 parts per billion. There's some corrective actions that we're going to work. Short term is going to be additional flushing. When we have water and weather, that's going to cooperate to do that. And long term is something that we actually started long before this violation ever come into contact with us. And that is looking and trying to have DEP understand our water quality changes that we've seen here with the implementation of a change of pH that happened back in 2017. So I know we've worked with Weston and Sampson, I believe they're on here tonight as well, trying to make changes, and those changes will happen, but they will happen slow. It's not something you want to jerk around and make different major changes at once. Small changes, let it sit for a little while, see what type of results we see. And, there's multiple things that lead to this. The change in basic water temperature throughout the system for the year is a big part of this, where we have to run a higher chlorine level than we typically would late into November. I think people have seen on the news that, climate change is something that is a big deal. I think 2021 was one of the top 5 hottest on record, so it's definitely something that's going to be around for a while, and we're going to have to make some changes here, and every change that we make has to be approved by Mass DEP. So there's a process involved. It's something that we're not sitting down with. We're actively working on this. I've been working on it behind the scenes before this actually happened. We're doing pretty good on time here.
Yep. 5:45.
I'm going to jump over to well 3. As was mentioned at one of our last meetings, we took our well 3 pumping location offline in December. We were tracking a slow, steady increase on the PFAS sample results. We take samples there monthly. Samples were elevated and slowly increasing. We did not exceed the 20 parts per trillion quarterly average limit at that location. But either way, it was a recommendation from SDEP to remove the site from the distribution system, possibly allow the aquifer to calm down a little bit, maybe do a little flushing to waste. And if we could leave the system off entirely, our well 3 system, and meet demand, that was their recommendation. We had lengthy discussion with them, lengthy discussions between myself, the assistant, and the primary well operator. Even with the numbers that we crunched, I think we spoke about this prior, it was going to be tight if everything worked the way it looked on paper. And we all know that's not so we did run without well 3 majority of the month of December, and we weren't comfortable with the run times at our other locations. We were able to meet demand, but the run times were, close to or at 24 hours a day. Something that we can't sustain. It wasn't worth, beating up the existing wells just to have this site offline for a short period of time. So we did make the difficult decision to put well 3 back online in January, which starts the quarter over. The PFAS samples, bacteria samples, everything will be taken as they have been in the past, and we will basically await the results there. There is a possibility the aquifer could have calmed down and we see the level remain in the teens where they were and under the 20 parts. There's also the possibility that we could see it over the 20, and if it doesn't average out for the full quarter, it could be an exceedance, which would be a PFAS violation if you go over the 20 parts per trillion, and that would trigger public education and public notice for PFAS. Again, we've been proactive with this by not only following DEP's recommendation to take that offline if possible, we've working with our engineers behind the scenes with our new 2 well locations. We have 5A and 6A that are constructed in place. We have the bids that went out middle of December. I don't recall the actual date right now, but the bids will be awarded here January 18th for the construction purpose of building the vaults and installing the pitless adapters and connections to the existing water main for 5A and 6A. What we've done behind the scenes is actually sought out Mass DEP approval for a temporary pump to be installed at the largest well, which is well 5A. Obviously, weather permitting, guys were out there last week, thankfully, were able to install the water main and the appurtenances from the existing water main that was installed when the water treatment facility went in, and we're able to run it within 10 to 12 feet of the pitless adapter that's in the ground right now. We have a rental agreement with our well driller, Frank Sullivan. He is going to supply us a temporary pump and fittings, which we will connect to the pipes that we installed in the ground, and should be able to get 600 to 700 gallons a minute from this location once our electrician completes the work running the pipes after we dig the trenches and get the permits and everything there. So the goal here would be, it's twofold. We can obviously take well 3 and possibly well 1, our other well site that's not filtered, offline, and use well 5A as our primary source, which will go through the water treatment facility. This will also hopefully cover ourselves because we anticipate product delays with the construction portion of the final wells. Pumps, motors, pitless adapters, all of that. Everything that we've seen in the industry has had a delay, so I have no reason to believe that something like this is going to be sitting on the shelf somewhere. So once the contracts are awarded, January 18th, it'll probably be a little bit further in the month after they're certified. So let's say for a ballpark, sometime in February, if the parts are ordered then, it's not going to be uncommon to see, months of delays on pumps and motors and parts. So by having, a temporary pump here, it provides us plenty of water for the future until we have the final construction finished. This will allow us to do the flushing to fire, help us out with the THM numbers, water quality, and multiple other things to maintain simultaneous compliance with all of our samples that we take. So there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes between the engineers, myself, and department members here. Everything hinges on that PFAS sample, whatever that number comes in at. Obviously, nobody enjoys handing out public notices, regardless of how well worded they are. It's just a situation that we are dealing with, and unfortunately, many of our surrounding communities have been dealing with for some time. We were in a different location in the aquifer that we've been very lucky. Our well 5A and 6A, the two new locations, are non-detect for PFAS. Something that's unheard of, in the area, but we'll take a win when we can get a win. So, like I mentioned, it's a lot of moving parts and definitely a lot of moving targets that we must hit and achieve for everything to work smoothly. The weather's not on our side right now. We had a small delay with, we were going to excavate the trench for the electrical conduit this week. That's going to be pushed off possibly to the end of the week, if not the early next week. We can coordinate with our electrician and town inspector so that we can have that inspected and installed properly there. Something we will need to talk about in the future is the security fence. As part of the well 5A and 6A project, we do have small site fences that will be going around the two existing well buildings and the two existing protrusions, which would be where the wells are actually coming out of the ground. Mass DEP really enforces that we control everything that goes on within the 400-foot boundary, which is called the Zone 1 around the drinking water well, where these two locations are relatively close. It would only make sense to encompass with one large fence both 5A and 6A. That may require rerouting of a walking path out there. It seems to be a very popular location because we have the dirt road and we maintain it, so it is a popular path for people. It's definitely just an area that you really don't want to have that much foot traffic or animal traffic or vehicles in that proximity to your Zone 1, let alone one location, but two that are that close together. So there will be some significant costs involved with fencing off that area, possibly cutting a new path. We'll work with the other departments in town to see what they can assist with. If it's something we can cut a new road completely through and fence this area off with regular gates, we will. If we have to put in large rolling gates so that we have emergency access vehicles able to get in, we'll do that too. But that's just something that's coming up down the road in the future. That's what I got for now, Steve. I do have one topic I can touch on later on under the unanticipated within 48 hours, but that'll be kind of a lengthy discussion, so I'd rather not jump around now.
Okay. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, I apologize. I lost connectivity here at my house, so I dialed in on my phone, and I'm trying to get back on the Zoom. But in any event, if that's all you got, Frank, we can move forward and go to the next thing. Will be a little early, but 79 West Main Street. Mr. O'Reilly, are you on?
Yep.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
We've just tell us a little bit about what's going on right there.
Sure. So if you recall, I was there in July. I was being assessed 2 betterment charges for 79 West Main Street and 2 for 77 West Main Street. I was told that because 77 had 2 apartments, that there was really nothing I could do about 77 West Main Street. I had to pay 2 betterments. Regarding 79 West Main Street, if you recall, I brought in notices from the building inspector telling me that it was a single family home. I had the Board of Assessors out there shortly after our meeting in July. They concluded that it was a single family residence, and they changed the record with the Board of Assessors. So then I thought, they were gonna tell you that they moved it to a single family, and then when I got my tax bill, I noticed that 77 and 79 were the same. I called to find out how many betterments I was being charged on each, and I was being charged 2 on each. The nice lady that works in your office gave me the form, told me I needed to fill it out with the explanation. I sent it in, and here we are tonight.
Okay, very good. I appreciate you explaining that out. I think all of our board members have looked at this with the change of assessment. I think that we can put that up to vote, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct, Steve?
Yeah, that is correct. You know, based on the assessors having re-identified this from a 2-family or 2 homes on the property to a single family, you guys can take a formal vote, you know, make a motion, I guess, to abate one of the units, you know, based on the actions of the assessors.
I second that.
Very good. Do I have a motion and a second? That's Steve?
Steve Bernstein, yep.
That's it. Thank you very much. All in favor
Aye.
of accepting this? Aye.
Steve, sorry, did we actually get a motion or did we just get a
I
second?
think you took it off of my words, yeah. So one of the commissioners
Yeah,
should
I'm sorry.
actually make the motion.
My
I'll go ahead.
apologies.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and motion that we approve the sewer betterment abatement for Jonathan O'Reilly, 79 West Main Street, in the amount of $16,000.
All right. Second that?
I'll second, okay.
A second? You got a second?
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And approved.
Thank you,
Thank you
gentlemen.
very much.
Thank you.
Sorry about the confusion with this.
Oh, no problem. Thanks. I appreciate your help.
Thank you, Mr. Rath.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Sorry about that, guys. I'm trying to negotiate and navigate here to get back on Zoom, but I can only do this on my phone, so I apologize for so much easier when you're in the same room. Okay. Well, with that being said, Mr. Couture, is that, how do you say your name? Please pardon me if I said that incorrectly.
That's fine, yeah.
And you're on, this is for the Pine Village condominiums. And I think all of we have the paperwork and have seen this. Could you tell us a little bit what's going on?
Be glad to, and thank you very much for putting me on the agenda tonight. Appreciate it very much. You know, back in 2017, obviously that's when things really start to return, at least in the public, and we were allowed to go to a meeting of your commissioners, and you know, there was obviously a discussion that we finally going to make a move on the sewer system, and that's something that just so you know, our residents pretty much have been looking forward to as well, as far as a long-term solution. We have no problems with our system, private system, septic system with 4 tanks. But we know that in the long run that is the correct solution for us. Of course, at that time, there was discussion about failing septic systems, and we believe at least one person in the town government had figured us, you know, our units as being one of those that had failed systems. And as I indicated before, that's definitely not the case. And then the subject of betterment came up of, you know, the $16,000, which we felt was difficult to take when we have a system that takes care of, each tank takes care of 3 units. We have 12 total units. So now we were going to be charged per unit, not just usage, but from a betterment standpoint. And we were not too happy about that. There was also an issue at that time as to whether or not per unit was going to be charged to everyone. And that part of it was resolved. And also it was thought that since all units are charged directly by the town for water and sewer, that it made sense that there would be separate laterals out to the main line on the street, on the town sewer system. And that was something that right away we also didn't like the sound of that. And this whole thing is, and even though we anticipated that, and we've always wanted to support tying into the town system, we always knew that this was going to be a very big burden, probably, we think, bigger than most of the properties out there because of the fact that our private system is under our parking lot, in the front of the buildings, not in the back. And that the total cost of putting in a new system, disabling our private system with the tanks and the pits that we have, all of that, plus what it was going to do as far as putting in new laterals, what we were going to be up against for other assets that we have, whether it be trees, damage to lawn, parking lot, repaving, the whole bunch of issues there that we understand we would have to address, but we certainly weren't looking forward to that part of it. So one of the things that we did early on, again, was we wanted to see just where our current systems were. So in October, I did have a Title V test. By the way, we test regularly every 3 years so that we always stay current. So if anybody, any resident, any owner decides to sell, that they don't have to worry about asking for another Title V reading. We always have that in hand. And it's also because we felt that every 3 years we should be examining that and making sure that our system works well. And so we've been successful for over 30 years now doing it that way, including, like I said, in this past October where we passed again, giving us another 3 years. So the fact that our systems are working well, it, of course, doesn't give us any motivation to move into this any faster. And yet, if you were to poll our residents, I think you would find that they would all prefer to move to tying in to the system as soon as possible, rather than to stretch it out. And of course, now we have 7 years to stretch out based on the town meeting article that passed this past October. But like I say, our motivation is not to do that. We would like to find a way where financially we could make it happen much sooner, even as early as next year, even though that I doubt that we would complete something next year, but that is something that we would definitely consider. Now, in regards to that betterment fee too, one of the things that's painful is that we think that was a figure that came up as sort of, okay, we have X amount of dollars that are coming from the town, we have X amount that's coming from the state, and we certainly agree with you that when you have an opportunity to get $1 million+ from the state, man, you got to try to find a way to make that happen at that time, because how often is that going to come up? We don't disagree with that. The only thing is that you know, for all of us there, you know, when we have an issue with the school or whatever, everybody participates and you know, equally. Now, I understand that because we're going to be able to get a little more benefit from that, you know, we got to pay more, but the 16,000 per unit in our case seemed to be, and we still feel is pretty excessive cost for us. So we decided that we would try to find ways. We didn't want to be a pain to anybody really, but we thought we got to find ways to reduce this cost somehow. And one of the ways we thought was that, gee, let's not have 12 stubs and 12 laterals running out to the street. Both Pine Village and the town can do better than that. So we got together with, first of all, we hired Rim Engineering in Mansfield, and one of their representatives, Craig Saganowski, he met with, I believe, Steve. Do you recall that? Steve, is that true that you met with Rim Engineering?
So this is Steve Peterson. Yeah, Weston and Sampson met with him. One of the engineers that was with me met with Rim Engineering, and we worked with them.
And you know, and it became pretty obvious early on that the best thing to do would be to try to find a way to run up the middle of the driveway, not 12 laterals through the fence, destroying basically the sidewalks at the same time, which of course would be a town expense. That we would find a way to run everything into the middle of our parking lot in between the two buildings that we have, and then run one 8-inch line up to the main line in the street. And so that's the way things have been, that were developed, and that's the plan that we've drawn up to do it that way. Now it doesn't, you know, there are some difficulties that come with that. We now have to maintain that part of the system. And it's, you know, it's more of a maintenance because we're going to have a central manhole and then two on the ends as well, so we can get in from that side. And that'll be something over the years that we're going to have to maintain. But we're still willing to do that because there'll be less destruction, even though not total. We're still going to have to move some trees. We're going to do a lot of damage to our lawns. And of course, we're still going to have some intrusion, significant enough into our parking lot, even though we only have one line going up to the street. But we feel that we've saved the town 11 stubs by aggressively going after that kind of a solution, as opposed to just having the ones. So, and we have talked with RIM, and we've talked to other people who are in the business, and we felt that it would really save the town $3,000 to $5,000 per stub. We decided to go with the lower number, and we would settle for being granted an abatement of the $3,000 on 11 stubs, which would be at $33,000. And we feel justified in being able to do that. Now, the second aspect of cost savings is that, as I mentioned, we have 7 years to tie in, even though we would prefer not to do that. But for us, that means a lot because there's such a discrepancy in what our current sewer costs are as compared to when we tie into the system and have usage with you. Basically, it costs us a little under $1,500 a year to maintain our system, private system, and that includes all 4 systems. And a yearly cost, that's per unit, and a yearly cost for you will be $346 per unit, or $4,150, something like that, total. So the faster that we can get onto the system obviously saves the town money as well, as much as in 5 years it'd be $20,000. I know that's not a big number for you, but those kinds of numbers mean a lot to us because, as Luke Grant said back in meeting that we had in May 2018, the cost per unit are going to be $30,000 or more for construction costs. And we've started to, get some bids and I mean, those are probably prices from 3 years ago. And things are much higher, as it seems like now, in anything to do with construction. So we know it's going to cost us big money like that. So a small amount like that would, this additional amount, if we can tie in, save the town money, that's fine. We're willing to go there if, in fact, we can get some kind of benefit out of it as well. That's pretty much what the basics are.
Now, each one of those units there, they're assessed as one unit, I'm assuming?
Yes.
So,
Yeah, I mean, and, in the beginning, we thought that we should only be charged 1 per 3 units because that's what we've been maintaining for 35 years. But
I understand that, but has the assessment changed on each one of those units?
no, there's
Are
still
they
16,000.
Which one is?
Oh, yeah, that's 192,000 for
one betterment unit.
192,000 for 12 units that are only 35 feet wide. Not taking much frontage.
Now, Steve Peterson, those that talk that you had with RIM Engineering and everything was assessment or anything. Does that come into play, or is that just the convenience of doing the one tie-in, or the what did you say? There's 3 tie-ins, or just the one tie-in?
Just one. We had talked
One,
possibility too of doing 1 per building. Or I mean,
Okay. Right.
There were a lot of things to discuss. Yeah, I mean, every property is unique. And, we meet with, we send out the forms and meet with any property owner that has questions. So this one was definitely different. And yeah, in our discussion with the engineer, it was just about what was acceptable to the town in terms of connecting to the sewer and what worked, best for the property. There's 4, like Dan was saying, there's 4, I believe there's 4 current systems out there, right? So
that's right. Yes.
So there's a lot of different, we could have done, 4 connections, 1 to each of those existing systems.
Right.
And it did make sense, the final layout that RIM Engineering came up with and the association put forward was to kind of run a pipe along the front of all the condos to a central point and then come out to the street and tie it from there. So, like I said, we work with all the abutters. We worked with them, communicated with the commission what we were going to do in terms of reaching that connection. And it's different for every property that connects, but when it comes to the, and I am, we can sympathize with the difference, not all properties face the same challenges or costs or issues with connecting. Everybody has their own issues, but in terms of the way the regulations are written and how the betterments are established, there was never a discussion that this had any impact on the betterment. Basically your regulations are clear that betterments are going to be assessed on the uniform unit method, which is laid out in Mass General Law, Chapter 83, Section 15. So it's right within the Mass General Laws. And the way the uniform unit method works is that every property fronted is you establish an equivalent dwelling unit or an EDU, where a single family, residential dwelling is 1 EDU. And then the regs go on to say, condominiums, rental properties, in-law apartments shall be assessed 1 EDU for each condominium unit or apartment. So that's where the 12 assessments come from, and it's not based on the, you know, the costs on the private property or the cost to specifically connect those properties. It's just based on, you know, trying to be, you know, equated throughout the project. You know, the single family home across the street pays 1 unit. Each of these 12 units are being viewed as 1 unit, just like the single family home is along the way. So that's how the assessment's done. It's pretty standard and, like I said, based on Mass General law. So, and it's challenging to try and mess with that.
Okay, thanks, Steve.
Steve, can I chime in here and ask a couple questions?
Yes.
Absolutely, please.
I guess this is, initially, before I make a couple comments, I have a couple questions. This is probably a question for Steve Peterson. These two building structures appear to sit significantly below the level of the road as opposed to other buildings and lots around them. Did, all things being equal, did the fact that that sat lower than grade affect construction at all? Like, did that add to any costs having to dig deeper or anything like that?
So yeah, I mean,
As opposed to if that weren't the case.
yeah. So we take the elevations of all the properties along the way and try to accommodate gravity sewer service for all the properties. There were a few properties along the way that we couldn't get the sewer deep enough to accommodate gravity, but we did. We are a little bit deeper here to accommodate this property and the adjacent properties to it that are all, you know, sit a little bit, you know, right even with or a little bit below the road.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, accommodating the connections, you know, with gravity does impact the depth of the sewer, and we did, you know, in this instance, we were able to drop the sewer down, you know, to be deep enough to accommodate this property.
Okay. It seems to me, and please correct me if I'm wrong on my understanding of the betterment, but for one, the betterments they have nothing to do with number of connections, it's dwelling units. So if there are 12 dwelling units, that makes sense that there would be 12 betterments the way it's all calculated, correct? Because you've got 12 individual units of families sending flow into the sewer. So whether it's 12 connections or 1 connection or 2, it doesn't matter. Has nothing to do with how the number of betterments are, how we come up with the number of betterments.
Yeah, it's not the stubs, it's the unit.
Right, and with that, the amount of the betterment, that was the Board of Assessors that came up with that amount, and I'm assuming they based that on what that property is going to be assessed now that there's going to be municipal sewer connected to it. In other words, the property is worth a little more money now. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, that's the basis of a betterment,
right?
The ability to charge a betterment is because there is a value increase.
That's very theoretical, though.
Yeah.
In practical application, you can understand that it is not betterment for us. At that price.
I think the whole spirit of that is they're trying to make it that they can't do a separate betterment amount for every single property along the whole project. So they I'm sure they put a lot of research into coming up with that number.
So the commission votes the number per unit. The 16,000 was voted by the Water and Sewer Board.
Right, but it was recommended by the assessors, Board of Assessors, right? So we took their information and voted on that.
No, basically,
in other words,
happens
come up with
is
the number 16,000.
that the 16,000 is basically how it calculated out is what they needed after all the other money was appropriated. It came out to 16,000 that everybody else, you know, to pay up to make it fit the budget.
It's actually based off of the last betterments that were assessed in the Winnicott area with an ENR, you know, over the last 12 years since the last time you assessed betterments. You know, those were like 11,300 were the assessments when Winnicott was built, you know, 15 years ago.
Right.
So this assessment was based on the 16. It's not an exact, you know, calculus of how much the project cost, because like we said, there were a lot of other parts, the town as a whole, the schools paid a share of this because the schools benefit from it. When I say the schools, the town as a whole picked up a piece of the cost. The housing authority, the grant monies that were discussed were part of it. And then, a chunk of the money to pay it back is being collected through betterments, and then there was some other mechanisms that were also used. But that's where the numbers come from.
Right. Okay.
But basically, it was to service the schools. They needed it, no question about that.
Mm-hmm.
Housing authority, they definitely needed it. And the best thing for the town is that it helps the commerce part of it, being able to connect more businesses and so forth. We're just on the outside, but we got nailed. And all we're looking for, whether it's abatement is the right way to do it, all we're looking for is some sort of relief so that we can join the party and, without a fight, or we don't really want to go down that road.
Well, the problem I have with it is that it seems like the reason you want the abatement isn't really in the spirit of abating the betterment in the first place. Like you're claiming that you saved the town money by going from 12 stubs to 1, but that also benefited you as well. You wanted to do that. You didn't want to tear up 12 stubs across the road. Correct?
Well, it did save us. It saved us some, but I wouldn't say that even in the end it's going to save us anything.
Specifically what it saved, but there was a give and take back and forth there a little bit.
Yeah.
So it seems to me that what you can argue that either way, and that may or may not be the case, but it still doesn't seem like it falls in the spirit of these abatements. We just abated someone from 2 units to 1 because they were reassessed and they realized the original assessment was incorrect. They fixed that, and now we approve that abatement, and that's correct. That's in the spirit of what we're doing here. But I don't know. It just doesn't seem like it falls under the reason why we would reduce that betterment amount.
So that's not how the betterments are calculated. It's not based on the cost of the stubs.
Yeah.
So if I do the same thing that they did, which is basically reduce the number of units, like if I were to combine every 2 units into 1, then I could make it work. Is that what you're telling me?
Well,
I mean, there were 2 apartments there, but there aren't now. Okay, fine. That's a good thing. I don't just.
It sounds like if you had them reassessed so that instead of being 6 dwelling units in each building, there were only 3, then yeah, that would qualify as a reassessment, and you would have to go to the Board of Assessors and have them change that, and then come back to us. Am I right about that, you guys?
well, yeah, but then 12 families couldn't live there.
That's true.
But then 12 families couldn't live there, right?
Yeah, although,
No,
once again,
but if
12
you
families,
combine-
we have averaged less than 2 per unit for almost all the 20 years that I've been there, maybe all of them.
Okay.
So,
Well,
it just, there are other disparities. When you look at what the senior housing, for instance, is paying for abatement, they had 238,000 for 144 units, which comes out to $1,600 per unit. And their construction cost, based on what was published as construction cost, it would be less than 11,000 per unit. So we just want to be somewhere in the line where it makes sense. And the idea that this is going to increase our values, wow, that is pretty hard to make that calculation when you look at the cost that we are encountering. There doesn't seem to be any way that this is going to better us in the long run. I mean, it'll take a lot of years, I think, for that happens.
Now, in regards to the housing authority, I believe they put in a substantial amount into the system for infrastructure as well as monies going forward. Steve, do you have that amount approximately, what they had given?
I mean, Off the top of my head, I think it was like 1.9 million. I don't have it right in front of me.
No, it's okay.
Is that what we're talking? So we're
I know
talking
you're
about, I didn't understand. So the Woodland Meadows, so yeah, there was a grant. I mean, that's a whole different discussion, and it is a different calc.
Right.
You know, they paid their connection fee based on units, but then they also paid for a cost of the construction, because we used the grant monies that they would have used to build a treatment plant. So.
Okay.
So that's comparing apples and oranges then,
A
basically.
little bit, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it is. Yeah. I mean, that was
Wow.
I mean, they were your partners in the project. They shared in the significant cost of the overall project.
Hi guys. My name is Lindsay Sanford. I'm the secretary here at Pine Village. I am off camera, just kind of listening. I just want some clarity on. So the betterment is based on per unit in unit owner and not development. So let's just say, like, I just want to be clear that if, 91 and 85 West Main Street was owned by one person, but there's 6 separate units in there, so let's just say 6 families, then how much, like, hypothetically, would a betterment be for per, like, 91 and 85, or would it be for the 6 units, even though it was only one owner?
It would still be for each individual unit. It's not based on the owners, it's based on the units.
Steve?
Yeah.
Like, to answer her question also, like, if you have a 4-unit apartment building tying into the sewer, it's still, even though it's one owner, it's still assessed as 4 units per the one building, correct?
Yep. That is correct.
But that's what I just wanted clarity on. So, just because we are all individual owners, that we weren't getting, the short end of the stick, if you will, because we weren't just like we weren't owned by Pine Village. But that's okay. I just wanted to be clear. So thank you.
Yep.
Yeah,
That's a valid question, Brittany. Go ahead.
there was that discussion early on. We were told that there was going to be different rules for those who were single owners, like renting out all the units, as opposed to individual owned units in our case. But that was apparently reconsidered and ended up being per unit.
It was always going to be per unit. I don't know about reconsidered.
Not if you go back to 2017, but hey, it's changed, and I'm not making an issue of that. We're just looking for some way so we can make this work for us, and to have the incentive to jump in and provide you with revenue, as small as it will be. I had it ahead of 7 years, but I don't know. It makes it hard for us to be motivated to do that under the circumstance of not being able to get any help, no matter how it comes from, without getting any help at all. So we'll have to, examine what other avenues of help we can get, I guess, if you're not able to help us.
To me, it just doesn't seem like it's in the spirit of what we're doing here. And maybe there's a route you can take to recoup this money that you feel you saved the town. I just don't think the sewer betterment abatement is the right path to do that.
Is there any other discussion from the board or anyone else? Well, without hearing any, at this time, I'd like to put this
I'm sorry, my,
Vote
my,
on this?
my computer was muted. This is Marcy Campo. I live at Pine Village Condo.
Okay, how are
Can you
you?
hear me now?
Thank you for
Okay.
coming.
I know I spoke to
Yep.
Frank Fournier at the very beginning, Frank, so I'm sure you remember me. So, yeah, I was, my concern is, obviously the price is very steep and we're not gonna revisit all this now, but did we ever have any, because I know I haven't seen any numbers, how we arrived at the 16,000? To benefit.
Steve, this quorum, sorry.
Yeah, I know that I went to the first meeting originally and I spoke as far as breaking down the cost, and I know we were talking about the connections and the four, only 4 connections and the whole bit, trying to save us how we, 16,000 is really steep per unit, 12 units here. And I know you guys gave us a break to connect in 7 years versus 5 years. And I think our concern is that we discussed at the annual meeting was motivation, like you say, to, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of exposure for every unit here. I've been here since 2001, and 16,000 is very, very steep for units that, So, did we ever really get the breakdown from the contractors to see,
Well, it was based on the previous assessments, there was an assessment established when the Winnicott sewers were built back in 2003. And those properties were assessed a little over $11,000, and that was 18 years ago.
Yeah.
So they basically ENR'd that number up to current day, like 2% a year.
Which is much different than ours because our situation, because those were new units, and when you're putting that in as you're constructing new units, all your costs are much less. So it doesn't really, that's apples and oranges.
Right.
On our
Absolutely.
situation as well.
That's a good point. Yeah, no, it's just,
And the other thing, again, is that, you're asking us to tie in and now pay the town rate for services. And, it's our costs are 35% of our usage costs are 35% of what our usage costs are going to be once we tie in. If you call that betterment, I think there's something wrong there. That's in addition to the, betterment fee and the construction fee besides. So,
we have to have a little more transparency. We're 12 unit owners. I've been here since 2001, and I'm in real estate, so I'm a realtor in the area, and I know the prices of condos have gone up in the whole bit. But you're talking $16,000 is a huge assessment for each unit. No one can believe it, and it's just, especially what we've gone through. We've approached the towns. We've had our, wrote letters, tried to be fair as far as we're all willing to pay an assessment. We, like I mentioned to Frank earlier in there, our intentions were, what we thought was going to be fair was we anticipated like $11,000-12,000, not 16. And just looking at knowing costs of construction and the whole bit, but knowing that we only have 4 tie-ins and we spent so much money with the engineering drawings and everything, and it's just really putting a major burden on the unit owners here. Major, someone could be in this, same house here, and our values are not what their houses are, and it's just very steep, really steep. And I don't feel the town has done anything to try to be transparent with us, to be perfectly frank, to really show us the numbers and really show us how, they can work with us to try to make it, we got one letter, okay, it's going to be 16,000, and 6 months later, okay, here it is. And I never saw a breakdown of how everything, I've never seen a copy of the contract. I know when I sat down with Frank in his office, it was sitting right in front of him to be signed. So, I think as unit owners, we have a right to have a little more transparency how the breakdown is.
Okay, so Steve Peterson, do we have some sort of breakdown of this cost?
it's, I mean, the breakdown, not per se, not the way that I think we're talking about it here. I mean, again, the assessments don't cover, they cover a small percentage of the overall cost of the project. You know, we basically just, you know, the commission, you know, voted to keep the assessment, you know, based on recent assessments that were assessed with the, like I said, with the, you know, 2% increase over the years. You know, when the project was talked about, it was always said that the, you know, the betterments would be somewhere, you know, in the $15,000 to $16,000 range for this project. And that's where they are, you know, so it's not, you know, like I said, most of the overall cost of the project are being paid out of other areas. You know, this is just one piece of the cost of the project.
Okay.
You know, it was really, you know, the regs say, you know, taking, you know, whatever the last betterment assessment was and, you know, bringing it into current dollars. And that's what was done. So that's where the 16,000 comes from.
How did you say that? I don't understand that. Can you explain that when you say the prior assessment?
The prior assessment, the last time the town assessed betterments was 2003 on the Winter Conduit project. And the assessment, the betterment assessments at that time were $11,183. So they've taken that at the 2% increase per year over the 18 years to get to the 16,000.
See, I don't believe that.
You don't believe that that's what
I
was
don't
done?
believe what you just said, because it basically came down to $1.6 million that you were looking for amortized over 100 units. And that conveniently came out to 16,000. So that's really how, it's not because somebody was saying, oh, this should be fair. That's not what I believe happened.
There's too much money.
Happened that it was a matter of bookkeeping and to make the accounting right.
Right.
Even though that $1.6 million, those people that were going to be charged that weren't getting the kind of benefit that the schools, that the housing, that the industrial community are going to get from this. It was just a way of getting the
An
books
easy
straight.
number. Yeah.
Let's call a spade a spade.
I think 16,000 for 12 units is putting people, you know, I've sold 3 units in the last year and so forth. And, you know, and I'm transparent with anybody that price was maybe in line. And I tried to, you know, I basically said, okay, well, you know, we'll be able to have town sewage and the whole tie-in. And I was, you know, couldn't have been any more transparent about everything. But honestly, it's a lot to swallow, you know. Like I said, it's just, I know costs, I deal with different town condos, and, you know, for 12 units for the type of property this is, it was a big number that was thrown out there, and I don't think there was transparency. It's a lot of money for everybody here to take on, and I don't think it's been fair with us. I really don't. And, you know, posing and we're asking for some relief, and you're basically saying that there's nothing that we can do. Is that what I understand? That's how you looked at an assessment and just added 2% arbitrarily. We haven't seen copies of contracts. We haven't seen the cost. I think there should be, you know, 6 months went by and we were told, yeah, it's going to be about 6,000. Next thing I know, boom, here's a letter in the mail. And, you know, and I went and I asked to see it from the beginning, and we worked on them. We've been spending, especially Dan has been spending a lot of time exploring all our different costs, engineering, and really trying to do the best for our unit on there. And we're not trying to be unfair, okay? But honestly, 16,000 is very, very steep, and we're not just going to back down and that without, if the town's not willing to do it.
I will say too that we've had very steady ownership. We've had very little turnover at most of our years that we've been there. But in the last year or two, we've had 5 sales in our complex, and at least 3 of them, this financial situation directly affected them. So that's 25% of the total. And I know that there are others that this is a burden. So we have good reason to ask the town in one form or another to give us some sort of a break. And by doing so, we are willing to, like I say, get excited about joining in, tying in, being part of the party, and that will increase, give you some revenue as well. You know, so I don't know what else I can do. We've tried to make it easier on the town as possible, and so we're just looking for a little help as well.
You know, we're going into a tough financial, you know, all of us with the inflation and, you know, prices have gone up, which is helping our property, but it's also putting a burden on people being able to take the next step if they want to do something and go on. And, you know, as you know, I mean, I chose to stay here for the ease of living, but, you know, there's plenty of people that probably plan to just stay in a few years. And this is really putting a burden, because we have had a lot of people live here. You know, some of the people are older, they're on fixed incomes, and it's not easy. It's really not easy at all. And, you know, we've tried not to even include condo fees or anything for a while, just because we're trying to, and we need to do that as well. And so, you know, it really, you know, it's the big picture that we're just asking the town. We're trying to be very fair. And I would appreciate if there's something that you guys can do to make the burden a little less for us.
Well, we definitely empathize with everything that's going on here. No question. Does anyone else have anything else they'd like to add?
They have one more comment, Steve, if I could.
Yep.
I don't know if we've been specific about this, if anybody has tonight, but Mr. Kosher, you're talking about wanting to something to relief a little bit to recoup some of that money and some savings somewhere along the line.
Yeah, whether it's an abatement or some other assistance from the town.
Okay, when this project was done and completed, that was before the October meeting where the time changed from 5 years to 7 years. So unexpectedly, not even knowing it, that was going to happen, you're getting an additional savings by getting to go another 2 years without being on municipal sewer.
No, it's not that. No, you are now in a position where you may lose out on 2 years of revenue. That's the reality.
To be frank, when that went from 5 years to 7 years, I think we all realized that everybody's going to wait 7 years now instead of 5. So personally, I'm not exactly expecting everybody to jump on to connecting. I'm expecting most people are going to say, great, I have another 2 years, and they're going to take advantage of that.
No, I don't look at that at all. I'd rather tie in and be able to sell my unit at some point and say, you know what, we have town sewage. I'm not looking forward to living with tanks that are how old here? And even though we have a passing Title V and they're in good shape, you know, if people want to
stay 1985. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I know. And if people stay here, okay, and, you know, we're spending all this money on assessments now and abatements. I mean, you know, in town, you know, we have a lien on our property for X amount of money now, right? So, and not seeing any benefit from it. So I honestly am in favor of tying in. I don't want 7 years, okay? I'd rather sell my property whenever I sell, whether it's 1 year, 10 years, or what have you, and say that I have town sewer and get some benefit. I don't like paying money and not having benefit, okay?
So in other words, you think your property is worth more if it's connected to town sewer?
No, I'm a realtor, and I also know it's not so much a dollar, it's making your property more marketable, okay? And if a lot of people will not even look at a place if they have private sewer, okay? So if you say that your property has town sewer, we have an intangible, you know, value, okay? We've added value. It may not be dollar for dollar. I'm not saying you're going to get more money because you're a town sewer, versus something that's private, but it's going to make it more in demand. And also, you know how supply and demand goes with pricing. The more demand you have, the higher prices. So indirectly, we are increasing the value of the property from the perspective of, prospective buyers.
Yep, I can appreciate everything you said there. But at the end of the day, that change from 5 years to 7 years was done to benefit the abutters. It wasn't done to benefit the town. That was done to benefit.
Yeah, for people not to come up, but that's not where we are. I don't care about, I'm talking about Pine Village Condo where I live, okay? And, I'm talking about the interest of all our units here. We have great people that have lived here for 20, 25 years. I mean, I've lived here since 2001, and a lot of the people, we've just had a few people move out, passed away. And so obviously there was some movement, but overall, we take a lot of pride that people like to live here and stay here. And this is really changing the whole picture. It's really changing everything for us here. And I don't know what's going to be, because there are quite a few people on fixed income here that are older, and I'm concerned, but we're just asking to be, and I don't feel that the transparency, number one, has been there, and how this is calculated. And I also, a lot of other towns that have gone through the same project. I mean, this isn't something new to us. And I know other towns have gotten quite a bit of breaks from a political standpoint. And I don't think anyone has done anything for us. Okay. And we're just leaving a bad taste in our mouth. We want to be fair, paying a lot of money. We want something fair and equitable for all of us. We chose to live in the town of Norton, and we want to have good, I sell in Norton. I like to have good things to say about Norton, and know that it's a fair town. I know there's a lot of commercial influence coming into it's going to add a lot of tax revenue for you guys. And, I just think that more could be done for us.
Okay. Well, thank you, Marcy, for your input. Dan, as well. I definitely empathize with you guys' plight. I just personally think that abating the sewer betterment is not the way to do this. I would love to find a method for you guys to recoup that some other way, but I don't think this is the right way to get that. I'm sorry.
I missed the beginning of the meeting. I'm sorry. What position?
Well, you're coming in broken up.
Yeah. Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yep.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, I missed the beginning of the meeting. I came in late, so I don't know all the things that, I know Frank, but who was the person that was just talking?
That's me, Jim Jordan.
Okay.
One of the commissioners.
So I just want to be clear here that because we decided that we're going to do one connection instead of the 12, and the house across the street is doing one connection, and we're doing one connection, but they have 2 people and we have 24 people, let's just say, well, we still have to pay $16,000 a unit, even though there's one connection. You guys are saying we don't care about how many connections to the street, it's per unit.
Yeah, and I know, I discussed this from the very beginning, Lindsay, with them, and I know they consider a unit a fixture, okay? Yep. And because we have a deed, we have a separate unit deed for all our properties, and that's how they look at it. But what you're saying is correct. I mean, we went down there, and at that time we're going to have 4, we have 4 connections now. We're not 12. We don't have our own septic system each unit. And I just think, granted, we're not getting anywhere, and we could beat ourselves to so we're going to have to decide what we're going to have to do, because I just think it's really, it's so disheartening. It really is so disheartening. Okay. We're trying to be fair. We didn't say we wanted not to pay a special assessment, and we didn't say we wanted 5,000, 16,000, 16 times 12. I'd like to see the contract, and if we have to get a lawyer to do it, what our rights are on that point. But we asked, we have not seen anything, okay? And I think as unit owners, we have a right, and we voted on this as an association a year ago. I don't know if an attorney or whoever didn't come forward. We were trying not to take that route without giving you guys the fair chance, okay? If you take 12, 16,000 times 12, okay? And I'd like to see how it's broken down. I don't want just a 2% increase from 2003. That doesn't cut it. And I'm sorry, but really, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money for a lot of people here. And I don't think it's fair and it's equitable at all. And that's all we ask, is to be treated fairly. I have a lot of people in the construction industry in Boston, in my family, and I will look into all the prices if we have to. I didn't want to go that route, but this is just it's a lot of money, and it's a lot of burden for a lot of people there. And it's going to take what they invested in here, and they're going to lose everything. So it's very tough. So I'm asking to see the contract prices and the breakdown and how everything was calculated. And I think, I wouldn't buy a car or anything without doing my work and comparing cars and comparing prices and seeing what value and how it's broken down and how you're arriving at the price that you're paying for. And no matter what I buy, I'm very methodical, and I think we each have, we have a right to see and have transparency as how you're arriving at the costs.
Is that something that we can provide, Steve? Is that something that?
Yeah. I mean, we have all the contract costs. I mean, you mean when you say the contracts, you just mean the costs incurred on the project.
Well, she's also, I believe, looking for where do we come up with the number of 16,000. I think that's what she's inferring.
Exactly.
Correct? Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, both, obviously, if I hired someone to paint my house, right, I'm going to ask them, are they paying by the hour? Are they paying by the job? And how many hours are they proposing that it's going to take, and what the labor is, and what's the labor? Everybody's entitled to make money, right? And we're not saying people, to do the job, we want the contractors to make money. We want, we're being fair. But I don't think 16,000 per unit is being fair to us at all. And I'm in the real estate business, and you know how many people I've mentioned that to, okay? And no one can believe it. No one can believe this. They know this complex. It's not, we don't have amenities here. It's not a luxurious condo, and it's not a luxury condo. It's not a luxury home. People move here, I've stayed only because it's been easy living for us, and it's just, whatever. But it's, not everybody's in the same position here, and I'm just asking for you guys to be fair to us, to consider whatever you can do to bring down the cost for us. And by doing so, yes, we'd like to see the copy of the contract numbers, because I was hoping we didn't have to go this, to get this nitty gritty. I thought it could just happen where we could come to terms and feel comfortable, but we're all not feeling comfortable with this. So that's a problem.
Okay. Very good. Well, we'll work on that. And I'm sure we'll be able to provide something exactly what you're looking for.
I think that should have been with a certified letter. That I don't even think the letters came certified, but it should have come certified with the breakdown of this. We arrived at this project. You're asking someone to pay $16,000. It's like, okay, just pay it. And we're supposed to just, okay. So, unfortunately, someone's going to be the spokesman. We've all felt this way. We've had meetings. I just think some people just don't know what to do. And I used to be the president of the board here, and not any longer. And Dan's been taking on a lot, and he's been spending way too many time on this, trying to give people a comfort level and trying to work hard to, and we're all hard workers here, and nobody's trying to beat the system. We're just trying to ask for equitably, to be treated equitably and fair. That's all.
I have to be honest with you. I don't think you're being treated any differently than anybody else. Because we charge per assessment, and the assessment is what it is. So that's how we became that number, and that number was all talked about in previous meetings. This isn't something that we just made up. This was talked about in previous meetings, but
We never saw anything. We never saw anything, right? Nothing was ever presented to us as how the numbers were arrived. It's just like it was given to us, we just have to accept it. I mean, would you want to put something without saying how it was arrived and what the contract price is and what the contract? So at this point, I'm asking for that, and I can share it with and okay.
Yeah. Well, yes. We'll have to see what our next moves are going to be, and we knew that it wouldn't necessarily be over with. We were hoping we could do it without a fight. And because neither one of us is gonna, win this thing if we end up in a fight. So it's unfortunate, I think. But I got to find a way to find fairness, though. And it's just not working for us. This whole theory of betterment is not working for us, and I think. There are others that will agree with that. People who are important enough to understand. Anyway.
Does anyone else have any more talk on this?
I mean, the way we look at it, it's like 193,000 for the 16,000, right? That's just it. People paid a lump sum without the interest, paying not a lump sum and paying over the years. So. It just gets to a point that septic systems are working right now, and we just passed Title V, and we do that to make sure that we meet our obligations here as a condominium association. And they could probably continue for another 5-7 years, and we'll probably just see 12 unit owners move out or what have you, because they don't want to deal with it all, even though they have the land and their property now, right? So, and they have to pay it. But it's just a matter of what value? I mean, a betterment is fine, but let's look at how it's derived in what our systems and what our property is. And we're getting treated as if someone just had a $500,000 house down the road, and we're just, having a $250,000 to $300,000 unit that was paying the same amount. It's hard to swallow. That's all. I'm sure you can understand that.
Again, though, it has to do with flow going into the system, not how big or small the unit is. If you have a $500,000 home with 2 people living in it, and you have a $100,000 unit with 2 people living in it, it's the same amount of people contributing to flow.
Yep, not arguing that.
Okay, so if you could just, how soon do you think you can send over the information as far as showing the contract and how we arrived at everything? How you guys arrived at everything, so that we just have a breakdown, we can share it with the unit owners there.
Can anyone help me with that, Steve?
Yeah, I can look into. I mean, I just have to go back to the paperwork. It's all here. I can get you something this week.
I appreciate that.
Steve.
Okay, thanks.
So without further discussion, if anyone else, one more time, if anyone else has anything else?
So you have all Dan's contact information, you can email it to him? Is that how you?
Do we have, I'm sorry, do we have that information?
Yes, I have his contact information.
Okay, that'd be great. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right, thank you. This time we'd like to get a motion to vote on this.
Quick question on that though, Steve. There being 12, officially 12 different documents, do we need to do a motion, 12 individual motions, or can we do this in one shot?
Question. This is very unique, so I'm not sure. Does anyone have that answer? To sound foolish or anything like that, but this is unique, and I don't believe I've run into this since I've been a commissioner. Can we do one for all, or do we need one for each one?
Or maybe one for each building, each structure, maybe, or?
I don't know if you can read off each unit number in
I
your
think that's what you
motion.
need to do, one motion, but all the unit numbers.
Okay.
Okay,
Do you have that, Jim?
I'm looking at another screen. It looks like, so 91 West Main Street, apartment 1, and then 91 West Main Street, that apartment number isn't filled out. Is it basically units 1 through 6 in each building? Is that how
Yes,
they're numbered?
correct. Right, that's exactly right.
Okay, and we got 85 and 91.
Correct.
Okay, so let me just write this down real quick.
Yeah, the town has it as apartments, but the units, I don't know. It's on the deed as apartments. I don't.
Okay, I'll do this all in one then, Steve.
Yes, please.
Okay, I would like to make a motion to deny the sewer abatement for the sewer abatements for units 1 through 6 in 85 West Main Street and units 1 through 6 of 91 West Main Street. Did I get that right?
And 79. No, sorry.
Oh, okay, not 79. 79 was the last one.
79 West Main Street?
Oh,
Yeah, that
I made
was
a
not,
mistake.
That's
I made
not
a
us.
mistake. I made a mistake.
That was the, yeah.
Oh, I thought
That's okay.
I need to redo that then, or?
No,
So
that's
we're
right.
specifically talking about 85 and 91 units 1 through 6 in each.
Yep, I think that's what I said.
That is correct.
Okay.
Do I have a second?
Second. By Steve Bernstein.
All right,
Okay.
all in favor of the denial?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Unanimous. Again, we will provide you with that documentation that you need, and hopefully we can come to some sort of conclusion. And we apologize, but we definitely emphasize with you with the situation. It's very unique.
Well, there'll be others, maybe, when you try expanding again, but, you know, you obviously, it's gonna be hard for us to support a lot of things that would going forward, that you would put forth, so. Anyway, just, you know, there are other units out there, they're gonna need septic help more than we will. And they should get to understand just what they're up against. And we'll be there to make sure that that happens. Well, thanks for your
Thank
time.
you very much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep.
We do as well. Thank you. Moving along, Weston and Sampson, water and sewer updates. We can start with, well, Steve, you have a sultry voice, so let's start with you. I'm sure you've got a small list.
yeah, I can give you the sewer update, so not much to report on. So last meeting, the Turtle Crossing people were in, so we're working on putting the contract together to do the peer review for that. And Frank, just to be clear on that, we're gonna contract directly with the developer for that peer review and not with the sewer department.
Right.
Okay. The Knollwood and Holly Road generators, Frank, I sent you that contract again, so you forward that on to the town hall.
Right.
Okay. So we're still waiting to see on that. As discussed at the last meeting, there's not gonna be much going on out at Cobb Street while we wait for the generator to be delivered. And then the only other thing is we still have to meet with people at town hall about the municipal complex sewer connection and discuss some of those options. They've asked us to give them a scope and cost to give them some options to connect to the sewer. So we're still working on that.
Okay, great. Thanks, Steve.
All right.
Moving on to water updates. Sarah, with some good news, baby.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Tara McManus from Weston and Sampson. Frank gave a pretty detailed update on wells 3 and 5A. Just to clarify, the bid opening is January 18th, and then it'll take a few weeks to probably award a contract, but that bid opening is scheduled for January 18th for replacement wells 5 and 6. And in the interim, we did receive on December 31st approval by Mass DEP to put the interim temporary pump in at well 5A to get around the 600 to 700 gallons a minute. So the water department's working on that directly with some local subs to get that moving. And then our driller will be out there in the imminent future to put the new well in there. So moving forward, at least with making attempts to get additional flow sooner than when the project would actually be constructed to help alleviate a few other concerns in town currently. So as wells 1 and 4, we're actually doing the investigation work right now for well 4. We did have a brief update at the last meeting, but just to reiterate, we did install some test wells. One of the wells was significantly better than, well, 2 of them were actually not too bad. One was a little bit better than others as far as the actual quantity of water we got, and we put in an observation well and did an actual pumping test last week on that and took some water quality samples. So some of the water quality will come back in the next week or so, but then we also took samples for some items that'll probably take several weeks to get back. But one way or another, replacement well 4 does look like we have a viable option. It is, again, a 2-inch test well, but production well will be obviously a lot larger, but the theoretical yield right now looks pretty good for test well 2. The weather has put a little bit of a damper this week on test wells installation in the well site number 1. We did get 1 in. We do have 2 more due. The driller is hoping to get back maybe by the end of this week, but we'll probably resume next week. Hopefully we'll have a little bit warmer weather, just not really agreeable today to work in single digits to install and complete any kind of construction work at this point. So that's a brief update on wells 1 and 4. I figured just stop with the wells right now and see if anybody had any questions or concerns about any of the updates from Frank and or well work. Okay, I know we had a lot of discussions already, so.
Yep.
So then we sorry, Steve.
I said that's what we're here for.
Yeah. At the end of the month or end of the year, we certified the submittal of the emergency response plan under the AWIA, the American Water Infrastructure Act, information through EPA. And we have some minor edits to make and just need to do some final printing, but the ERP is complete. It's updated in accordance with the AWIA requirements. So that project is nearing completion. There's one item that we can also set up, but with COVID, I think we're going to probably hold off for a bit, but having an actual training exercise with some of the folks in town, commissioners and or heads of the departments, just to kind of go over the emergency response plan and the course of action. The water department is extremely familiar with it. And they've also had, they go through annual emergency response training as well, but there's an opportunity. It's an add-on. It's an optional task. I have a feeling we'll probably wait till maybe either the weather gets nicer, we can do something outside, or hopefully we're back on with in-person meetings at some point. But at some point we can go through that. I don't think there's a huge rush, but there's definitely the plan is in place, and we had updated it already to include the treatment plan about 1.5 years ago anyway. So there wasn't a huge level of effort for that, but just want to go over structure and just the the action plan as needed. Certainly everybody can have a copy electronically in the near future as well. So once we finalize that with Frank and his team, we'll have that done.
Excellent.
And that's pretty much the updates on the water side. It's a little slow right now with the weather, so.
Well, cross my fingers. Thank you, Tara.
Sure, no problem.
Steve, this is Steve Bernstein.
Yep.
I have a question for Steve Peterson. Steve,
Yes.
if you're still on.
I'm still here.
So when you provide the $16,000 breakdown, I would assume you're going to submit that to the commissioners and that we should see that before we issue anything to anybody?
Yep. So I was
Thank
just
you.
going back and looking and, I have a memo that was prepared that breaks down, all the total costs and how it all came up with. So I just want to look at that again. It was right before work was done, so I might need to update it a little just based on the plan.
I would suggest that we get that information from you and discuss it at our next meeting before we issue anything publicly.
I would agree, yes.
Yeah, I agree. We should maybe before you send it to her as well. Good idea,
Yep.
Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Steve. By the way, there's too many Steves in this group. or there can't be too many Steves.
Well,
There's
when we
never enough.
meet in person, my name changes to the Cookie Man anyway, so.
All right.
Yeah, I kind of feel like an oddball on the board now. You guys have the same initials.
I know.
It is confusing, and I'm already confused. So,
All right, does anyone else have anything else on their plate they'd like to talk about?
I got something if you got a couple minutes.
Sure.
All right, so under topics not anticipated within 48 hours,
Yep.
I was speaking this afternoon with Paul DG.
could we define what that means, by the way?
Well,
What
basically,
this 48 hours is?
anything that comes up that wasn't able to get put on the agenda, it will be something that we could talk about that the commissioner cannot make a vote on. It's more of an informational option, something that may be coming up in the future, or something that's imminent that needs to be talked about right away.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Food for thought.
So I was speaking with Paul DG, as the Director of Planning in town, regarding 196 Mansfield Ave. So the two commissioners are well aware of this property. Many, many years ago, owners would come before the board and have to secure water and sewer flow based on what they planned to build when we had moratoriums in place. This was one of the locations that secured a specific amount for water, entered into an agreement with the town for both water and sewer. They acted upon the sewer portion of the agreement and have actively been paying for their unused portion of sewer annually, but the water portion is something that they haven't done. I don't have the amount of years in place, but it's a substantial amount of years. I don't recall what that is right now. John, you don't recall, do you? You seem to have a great memory.
I don't, not off the top of my head.
All right, regardless. So basically what the new applicant is asking for is something that's a little different from what we have allowed in the past. So in order to move forward with their conceptual design, they have to present that to the planning board. Typically, we would be the first stop for any type of builder once we can tell them that we agree to and can supply them with water and or sewer at a particular location. What they're possibly looking to do here is do it a little bit backwards. They know that the bill is looming. They are willing to pay the bill, but they want to get the approval going through the planning board first for the project. If we can come up with some type of document that obviously keeps them on track for the money that was agreed upon way back when, substantial amount, it would ease their concerns and allow a project to be built in town. It's been a number of years that we've held the flow for that location and haven't been paid for it. This kind of seems like a done deal. If they can push their proposed building through planning with the acknowledgement that the water will remain available to them, obviously provided they pay the bill. Nobody's going to build a piece of property or build a building on a piece of property, and not pay the bill so we don't turn the water on. It's just an unorthodox way of doing things. I wanted to run it by the board real quick. something you guys can think about. I could send Mr. Bernstein the information that's been provided to James and Steve Bishop long ago, so that you have a chance to bring yourself up to speed with it. And you know, something we may want to act on relatively quick, possibly at our next meeting, so that we don't create any delays for the development or the approval of development at this property. It seems like a win-win for the town, but there obviously are some, you know, background concerns that, you know, could the person build and still renege on paying their portion of it? I don't know if there's a legal document we could draft up that they'd sign and agree to, but that's above me in the department as far as legal goes.
Okay. Yeah, just definitely discuss that. Get that in front of us, and we can discuss that more with Steve. And
Frank, quick question on that. I'm looking at the document here. It looks like it goes back to 1997 is when this all kind of started.
That is the original start date.
During that time, have we had to deny any developments happening on account of not having enough flow to guarantee them because we're holding it for this property?
It is my understanding that multiple properties were denied. It was basically whoever the biggest shark in the ocean was at the time would rush to the department, set down a check, and write an agreement for a certain amount of gallons so that they'd have the potential to build. And there was very limited capacity back in the 90s, early 2000s for both water and sewer. So I would find it very hard to believe, without going back and actually researching documents, that there weren't people that were turned away because of this, which is also why that document seems to hold true, because it was a legal document. You know, certain amounts of flow were guaranteed to this person. They agreed, the town agreed. You know, it's still in place and holds true today that they do still owe it. I think there'd be more of a concern if the legal document was to be dissolved, that we may see some action from parties who may have moved out. So by holding this document, holding the property owner to the agreement he made, even if it was that long ago, it seems like the best option for everyone.
That's what it seems like to me. Even if hypothetically they decided they want to put an end to the project and not do it, they're still on the hook for the water from all those years that were denied from other people.
You're exactly correct. There's many locations that chose to purchase sewer flow was the biggest thing back then. Water was not that big of a deal, depending on what you had at your facility. Some of the larger storage facilities, right now we have what was known as the Polaroid building, which I believe is now Auto Parts International, and they actually changed to something else. They use very, very little bit of water there, but it's fire protection is what they mainly paid for. They had to have it available, and they have very little sewer costs incurred because there's only one or two facilities there. This location is almost the opposite. They actually anticipated using a decent amount of water for the square footage of the building that was proposed at the time, and their sewer was apportioned to that. So we have people that pay each year for unused sewer flow just to hold the capacity because they don't want to lose it. So they bought it at a very good rate. They still hold it. This is one of those properties that remains with water and sewer flow that was agreed upon. It's actually before my time. I started, in 2000. So going back 97, it predates most people that are still here.
Yeah. Okay, and just so I'm clear, what they're asking for is to get the approval from the planning board to go forward before paying us the money they owe us.
That is correct.
Okay, is there anything to prevent that's going to, if that happens, there's no loopholes that they're going to be able to go forward without, like, I'm thinking they need to pay us before they do any breaking ground of anything, right? I mean,
the formality portion would have to be discussed. Ultimately, we are the ones that hold the key to turn the water on. If they want to spend the money, install the complete infrastructure, soup to nuts, building, top to bottom. If they don't pay, we just don't turn the water on, and you have a property that sits there that's getting taxed. Is most likely at that point without a water service and a fire service going to require a fire watch. So there's multiple negatives.
Unfortunately, that doesn't help the people that got denied because they were holding out.
Exactly.
That kind of sucks, but okay, thank you.
I mean, I can bring Paul DiGiuseppe in on one of our next meetings to talk a little bit more about it. If it's something you guys want to discuss with him, he knows a little bit more about the applicant, about the building that's proposed. It is a multi-use building. If you think that's necessary, I can definitely reach out to him.
Okay.
All right, well, we can talk more about that, instead of, grabbing him and pulling him on board now. Well, let's just talk about it first.
Yeah. I just think, I think you're right about if we dissolve it, we're looking at opening up a can of legal worms, but at the same time, if we go forward and let the planning board approve them, there should be some other kind of documentation attached to that, having to do with the monies that they owe the water department.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
Agreed.
Thank you.
That's all I have, Kevin.
All right, next meeting, I believe, is the 25th. I think we've already spoken about that, so
I think we have.
we'll probably do another virtual, in lieu of everything that's going on, and hopefully in February, we can start back up with, in session with see faces. But, I think the next one's gonna have to be probably virtual as well.
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right, that might be the smart thing to do. So, so without further ado, Jim?
Okay, I would like to move that we adjourn this evening's meeting.
I will
Hear a
second. I will second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, gentlemen, thank you very much. Appreciate everybody chipping in.
Thank you, everybody.
And doing what they can. Thank you very much.